Hi everybody, we're going to work with 7.1 today. This is the first lesson of Unit 7. It is called Quadratic Graphs and Their Properties. Okay, so first, let's talk about the vocabulary here. It says a quadratic function in standard form. This formula right here, a equals ax squared plus bx plus c, is pretty important. We will refer to this quite a bit. It also creates a parabola. So a parabola are these U-shaped graphs. You might have been able to see them maybe in 8th grade, but again, a parabola is a U-shaped graph. The other word we use for that is quadratic. So a quadratic function creates a parabola. Now, there are many parts of a parabola which are listed here in example 1. Okay, so first we're going to identify the vertex of the parabola. So I'm going to do that in blue. The vertex is down here. So the vertex is always like the one point that's either the highest or the lowest point of the graph. And it's where that curve is created. So that point would be 1, -4. Okay. Now, going along with the vertex, we have this right here. It says, can you state if it's a minimum or a maximum? So basically, you look at that vertex. Is that vertex, that point, is it the lowest point or is it the highest point of the graph? Well, in this case, it's the lowest part of the graph. We don't know the high point because this keeps going up. So in this particular case, we're looking at the lowest point. And you always look at your vertex. So the lowest point would be a minimum. Okay. Okay, next, I'm going to look at the x-intercepts. And we have other names for those. So x-intercepts are like the roots or the zeros. Another word you could also think of is the solutions. Later on, we're going to solve these equations, and those are known as your solutions. Okay, so x-intercepts, they're going to be where the x-axis is. So here's your x-axis. I have a point here and a point here. So those two ordered pairs would be -1, 0 and 3, 0. Okay, so I went over 3, stayed at 0. Okay, next we have the y-intercepts. Sometimes it's just 1, sometimes there's none, sometimes there's 2. So for the y-intercept, here's your y-axis, and I see that the parabola crosses right there. Okay, so that would be 0, -3. Okay, lastly, the axis of symmetry is a line. Okay, I find the vertex, which is down there, and I draw a vertical line straight through that. Okay, now I look to see that vertical line crosses the x-axis. So it's going to be x equals, and it crossed at 1. Now, something you should know is that this number will always be this number. So whatever your x is in your vertex will be what x equals here. Okay, moving on to part B. So for part B, we have the vertex again. So here's your vertex. That would be at 0, 2. In this case, this is your high point this time. Okay, the lowest point we don't know because it keeps going down. So my highest point in this case would be a max or a maximum. Now, for the x-intercepts, I look to see, does the parabola cross the x-axis, and this is your x-axis, and it does. It crosses right here, and here. So the x-intercepts would be negative 2, 0, and 2, 0. And remember, we also can call that the roots, or the zeros, or the solutions. Okay, next, the y-intercept, or intercepts. Okay, now this one, it ends up being the same thing as the vertex. We see it's the only place where this parabola crosses the y-axis. So it would be the same point. So that would be 0, 2. Okay, then my axis of symmetry is you find the vertex, you draw a vertical line through the vertex, and you say, oh, that line crosses the x-axis at 0. And remember, that is the same as this x right here. Okay, moving on. Down here it says, determining direction of your parabola. Does the graph open up or open down? So opening up looks like this. Opening down looks like that. Okay, so the parabola would open down, going down, opening up. U for up, down is just going down. So down here it says this is based off the a value in the equation. Earlier we discussed in the vocabulary the formula for a quadratic. Okay, I'm going to write that down here. Okay, you can see that the a is in front of x squared. So this is my a. My b is in front of x, but I don't have an x. And then my c is just a number at the end, so I have a c. Okay, I'm going to go through and label them all. So a is in front of x squared, b is in front of x, and c has no x. It's at the end. Okay, now for this one, my a would be an invisible 1, so I'll write that 1 in. B is in front of x, and then c would be that last number with no x. Okay, it says this is based off the a value in the quadratic equation. The a value is in front of x squared, so we discussed that. If the a value is positive, okay, that's a positive 2, then your parabola goes up like this. So a was positive, it goes up, so this opens up, and that means that the vertex would be down here, and that's the low point, so that would be a minimum. That is a low point. Okay, here, my a value is a negative, okay, which means the parabola opens down. So that means I put down. The vertex would be where the curve is at, right? So that would be a high point, which is a max, or a maximum. Okay, and then in C, we see, that the A is a positive 1. So positive A means you open up. Your vertex is a low point. So then that would be a minimum. Okay, then for the next part, example 3, okay, this says find the vertex of a parabola. So this time we're not given the graph, we're just given the equation. And it wants us to find the vertex of this parabola. So one, even though it says here find the x-coordinate, I'm going to say that the first thing you want to do is label A, B, and C in the equation. Okay, so we were doing that earlier with the formula that we were given. So here's your formula. Okay, so A is in front of that x squared. B, there's no B because there's no x. And then C would be your last number. Okay, so we're going to go through and label. So here we go. A is in front of x squared. No B, but C is that last number. Okay, we've got a 1 for our A. B is in front of x. And then C at the end. Okay, A, B, and C. All right, so now it says, does this graph open up or open down? Can you find the vertex, and is it a min or a max? So quickly, we can do this first one and the last one. Okay, if A is positive, we know that the parabola is going to open up. So it'll look like this. Okay. That means that the vertex is down here, which is a low point, and low is min. Okay, now, how do we find the vertex? Well, we follow this up here. So step 1 says use this little equation right here to find your x value of your vertex. All right, so I don't have a b. So if there is no b, b is 0. So I will say negative 0, and then 2 times a is 6. Well, 0 is neutral. It can't be negative. It can't be positive. It's just 0. So that's just 0 divided by 12, and that's 0. So right now we found that x is 0. So here's what you know. X is 0. Right down there. Now, step 2 says substitute x, so substitute our 0, to find the y-coordinate of the vertex. So we're going to plug that 0 into this formula, like substitution. So step 2, here's your equation. I know it seems like more work to write it out, but the reason I did is because I want you to understand that you are putting your 0 in that x and putting parentheses around it. So, y equals 6 times 0 squared plus 7. Okay, 0 squared is 0 plus 7. 6 times 0 is 0, and 0 plus 7 is 7. So that means that our y is 7. So we have step 1 and step 2, and that gave us our vertex. And remember, it's always going to be x comma y. Okay, so for problem B, same method. So first, how does it open? It has a negative a, so it opens down. Okay, so that's down. The vertex is a high point, which is a max. Step 1 of the vertex. Here is the formula from above, up here in your steps. We plug in. So I look for b. I don't have a b. That means that b is 0. And then I have 2 times a, which is a negative 5. So now I have just 0, multiply, get negative 10. But 0 divided by anything would be 0. So my x is 0. Okay, for step 2, I'm plugging that 0 into the x right here. So y equals negative 5. So negative 5x squared plus 2. Remember, you're putting parentheses around the x squared. So negative 5 times 0 squared plus 2. 0 squared is 0. Negative 5 times 0 is 0. Plus 2 is 2. Okay. Now, for letter C, okay, let's do the opens part. So A is a positive 1. If it's A is positive, it opens up. My vertex is a low point, which is a minimum. Step 1. We need to plug in our numbers to the x equation. So negative b. So that negative stays, and because that b has a negative, you write a negative 10. And yes, two negatives make a positive, so this becomes just a positive 10. Then I have 2 times my a, which is 1, and 2 times 1 is 2. This divides to be 5, which means that x is 5. Okay, step 2. I take the original equation, and I want you to understand that, since there's nothing there, I don't have to worry about anything there with parentheses. But since I do have a number next to x here, I'm going to put parentheses. So x would be 5 minus 10, and then 5 again, plus 9. So make sure you have your exponent. Make sure you have parentheses. We plugged that 5 in twice because we had 2 x's. Okay, so now we're going to simplify. So exponent would give me 5 squared is 25. I can multiply. I get negative 50. And then I'm going to add or subtract from left to right. So 25 minus 50 is negative 25, plus 9 is negative 16. That is my y coordinate. Okay, in letter D, write out your formula. So 14 goes into negative b. So I have a negative from the formula, and b is 14. 2 times a, which is negative 7. So this gives me negative 14. Multiply, I get negative 14 again. Divide, I get a positive 1. So that means that x is 1. Okay, step 2. We're plugging that 1 into every x in the equation. Okay, and we're going to put our parentheses around this one because there's a number in front of it. We're going to also put parentheses around that one as well. So y equals negative 7, parentheses 1 squared, plus 14, parentheses 1 again, and then plus 3. So for this one, a few more steps. So negative 7 times, 1 squared, that means 1 times 1 is 1. 14 times 1 is 14, and then I bring down that plus 3. Okay, negative 7 times 1 is negative 7, plus 14, plus 3. Negative 7 plus 14 is 7, plus 3 is 10. So that's my y coordinate. I forgot to do this part. So opens down, that's a negative a. Okay, so opens down, and that means that my vertex would be a high point, which is a max.